Hello and welcome from me, Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson to this special Motor Trade Radio podcast interview. Many thanks for joining us for this weekday special episode. Today we're delighted to be joined by Caroline Burnell, who is Head of Marketing and Communications at eStar Truck and Van and the winner of this year's Barbara Cox Award of the Year. So Caroline's here to chat us through about her career to date, what winning the award means to her and her view on opportunities for women in the automotive sector. So welcome to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, Caroline, and congratulations on a well-deserved win.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me on. It's funny, just before we kind of hit record, we were talking about, in my career, I have always kind of sat in on interviews and helped whoever was going to speak on them to prep, and they were never about me, so this is a very surreal moment.
Well, having sat in on some of those interviews in the past, Caroline, because I was a journalist back in the day. You looked after PR at Mercedes, and we were often in the same room, and I'd be interviewing someone. So it's great to have you on the other side of the mic at last.
Yes, isn't it a weird feeling?
It is, yeah.
But it's great, and thank you so much for inviting me on.
No, you're more than welcome. Well, look, many congratulations on winning the Barbara Cox Woman of the Year award. I was delighted to see that you'd been shortlisted, and when Philip told me the shortlist, I said, "Oh, I know Caroline." So I was really delighted when you went on to win. So congratulations for that. And
thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. By way of an introduction for our listeners, here's a brief outline of your career to date. So you started your career in 2005 at the Drum Consultancy, which is a PR agency, and you were looking after Auto Trader and helping to launch FordOnline.co.uk. You then moved to the busy Mercedes-Benz press office, working across both cars and commercial vehicles. And as I say, that's when I first met you, before being promoted to head up the press office for Mercedes-Benz vans. And last April, you joined eStar Truck and Van, the four-site Mercedes-Benz vans and trucks group, which operates across the northwest of England and North Wales as Head of Marketing and Communications. So a busy career to date there, Caroline.
Yeah, do you know, it's funny, and when you kind of see it listed like that, you think, oh gosh, I have been doing it quite a long time. My dad was in the motor industry for an awfully long time, and I think I kind of feel like I grew up in it, and even weekends away and things that we were doing, my dad would get hospitality tickets and things like that for whatever it was that they were sponsoring at the time. It was Lotus racing, I seem to remember, and things like that. So motoring and the kind of motoring community was all around me, and having had the opportunity that I did when I moved to Mercedes-Benz to kind of get to see different sides of the industry, both cars and commercial vehicles. So I feel like I've had such an exciting journey through my career, really.
Yeah, that's interesting. So automotive is very much in the blood.
Yeah, very much so. And I cannot imagine working in another industry. I really can't.
No, nor can we.
No, I think that's
we have been lost.
We can all relate to that one, can't we, Caroline? It's so like you say, being brought up in an automotive family, you just can't get away from it, can you? It is in the blood, isn't it? As you're obviously now finding out.
And it makes you realise how small the community actually is, isn't it?
Yes.
That it's like 6 degrees of separation. Everybody kind of knows everybody else through somebody else. So, and that's really nice. Yeah,
it is. I mean, so let's get to the Barbara Cox Woman of the Year award, which we know was announced earlier this month on International Women's Day, and I had the pleasure of joining in virtually and watching the event. I probably couldn't have got in the room anyway. It was that busy by the looks of it. I mean, just phenomenal turnout for that. And this is obviously the 4th year of the awards, and it recognises women that have demonstrates commitment to the innovation, leadership and community. And particularly in the automotive world. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what you went through to get there, and what it means winning the award, what it meant for you once you knew that you'd won and not been shortlisted?
Yeah, do you know, it was the funniest thing. So Steve Bridge, who's my boss and the managing director of eStar, he nominated me, and I've worked with Steve for a very long time. I think we're now kind of 12 years in working together, and I'm very much used to being, and I've always described myself as a wing woman. I'm a behind the scenes person. You know, I'm very much all about kind of championing the people who I feel either deserve a voice or that, you know, they can't get their voice heard. I love building brands and kind of seeing people's confidence grow and all of that. So my whole career has been about helping other people. So when I then saw that I was shortlisted for this award, it really threw me, and I was kind of quite I was very humbled. And then you see the shortlist of the other amazing finalists, and it was very eye-opening to see what fantastic things are being done in the industry, and actually what a great initiative to shine a light on that, and for women to kind of have this platform and start talking and sharing, and not being, you know, again, I think as women there is almost a bit of this imposter syndrome that creeps in, where you think, oh, you know, my achievements aren't anything compared to anybody else, and so actually to be in a room full of people that were there to champion each other and acknowledge their own achievements was really quite something. It was a very, very special day. And, you know, then as the day went on, and they were announcing who the winner was, and of course with the preamble about why this person had won, and I was sat there thinking, oh, that's fantastic. You know, I wonder who it is. Like, they've done some amazing things. And then as this kind of speech was coming to a close, and they started talking about, oh, and, you know, this person's a mental health first aider, and da da da. And I thought, oh my goodness, they're talking about me. And I was in complete shock and surprise and awe, actually, at the other women that I was in the room with and the amazing finalists that I was with. And we'd had a panel discussion, so you really got to hear and understand about what the other women had achieved. So it was a very strange moment, but such an honour. I cannot explain how special that felt.
And I think watching it, I think I could see the point in which you'd, as you say, sort of the bio was being read, and you kind of I could see it on your face that suddenly, and I didn't have a clue who the winner was, obviously, but I think you just realised, didn't you, that it suddenly clicked. Oh, it's me. It suddenly got to that point, because obviously the camera was on all of you on stage, and you sort of looked to the left and thought, it's me, this. And fantastic. I mean, it was a great event, just even to watch it virtually. I mean, you know, as you say, some great shortlisters and nominees for this, and it's got better year on year on year, and I think, you know, fantastic that it was then physical, because last year obviously it was purely in the virtual space, so to do it physically and be able to meet and greet everybody was a great event.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, I said the first thing, and you know, there is that apprehension. I mean, there is anywhere. I think anytime you go to a big event or whatever that you think, you know, that you've not been to before, and what will it be like, and who am I walking into a room with? And the first thing that happened when I walked into the room was the other finalists kind of all hugged each other and said congratulations, and what a special moment that was. And you know, with all the kind of COVID restrictions that have been, just to physically be in a room with people and, you know, to hug and kind of experience this great moment together really made it quite exceptional.
And Caroline, as you say, the Barbara Cox Awards, the scheme is all about recognising the achievements of the finalists, all of whom, you know, have excelled in their fields. Now, I understand on the day you were asked what you would have told your younger self. So what thoughts actually occurred to you then?
Yeah, well, it was such a funny one that this question was asked, because this is work that I've been doing behind the scenes. So I'm a really big advocate of kind of self-learning and self-development around your well-being and understanding your mental health. So this was work I'd actually done really recently in trying to kind of connect with my younger self and what would I want to tell her. So when it came up on the day, I was really, it kind of made me feel quite emotional. The whole day was quite emotional, actually, but really trying, because it's an odd thing when somebody says, you know, think about, you know, going back to, I don't know, when you're maybe 8, 9, 10, and you know, how were you, and say something to yourself that you wish you knew then. And it's a really odd thing. And what came up for me was this idea of self-belief. I think I have spent so long, and I think it's something that many women can empathise with is, and I mentioned it earlier, this idea of imposter syndrome, and that somehow you're not good enough. I think as women, we battle with so many other elements outside of work. We battle a lot with our appearance and what kind of society thinks that, we need to look like, whether that's advertising and airbrushing. And we had all of these things. I grew up in the 90s when, it was Kate Moss was at her kind of element. So the whole piece then about your appearance, you have to take up a very small space on this earth. Women are, or my perception, my younger self, the perception was that women had to be kind of quite quiet, whereas the men perhaps were more gregarious, and women were in a very much a supportive role. So I would, my whole piece was I'd love to go back and say to my younger self, just have that belief, have that confidence, because all these things are in there. We've all got the tools, but it's having that confidence to bring it out and to make your voice heard. Not in a way, I don't think people have to shout to be heard. I think your actions can speak very loudly, but it's having the belief to put yourself forward in that situation, or to, come up with a solution, or whatever it might be, to have the belief to put yourself out there, and accept failure, and the failure is going to be part of it. But it's, it's almost like this too shall pass. If there are bumps in the road, you will get through them. If there are times in your life that you think, I don't know what path to take, something will happen, and you will get through it. And to go back and say to my younger self, just believe in yourself and kind of carry on down the route you're going. And I'd love to do that. And it's a really interesting exercise. And I think if anybody listening is interested in doing it, it can be as simple as just writing a letter to yourself, just really trying to picture what is it that you want to say. And it's amazing what comes up. It's amazing the kind of work that you can do with that, and think, do you know what, the overriding message is, X, Y, Z, whatever it is. And for me, that was this self-belief.
That's such a key point, that self-belief, which we do a lot on the show on well-being, because we are associated with Men Able, and that self-belief, looking at the sort of typical stereotypes, that is probably a lot easier for a man in the automotive sector than it is for a woman. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Well, there's that famous stat, isn't there? And I think it was published in the Harvard Business Review, but when men apply for a job, or men will apply for a job when they only meet 60% of the criteria, but women will apply for a job only if they meet 100% of it. Yeah. And I think if that kind of ever sets us apart, it is that. And it's something that I hear when I'm kind of mentoring and speaking to younger women in our business, that, there is almost this idea that, well, I'm not quite there yet. I'll wait till I'm, a little bit further forward in my career. Whereas I know that their male counterpart might be a lot more comfortable and going, do you know what, I'll train when I'm on the job. I'm going to go for that role. And I think we can all learn something from each other on that.
And knowing what you know now, Caroline, and you've had this amazing career to date, would you promote automotive as a career choice to young girls who might be leaving school, or older girls leaving college or university?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think, we talk about the industry changing more in the next 5 years than it did in the last 50. We've got electrification and digitalization and personalization and all of these amazingly exciting things happening in our industry. And, let's not forget either that some of the original pioneers in automotive were women, people like Bertha Benz, who, of course,
yes,
with my Mercedes background, we were all taught about. And there are so many opportunities, and I think it's not just in the traditional roles. And I'm very aware that I'm in the traditional role of marketing, or you've got, HR or admin, but actually in terms of like the STEM subjects, when you think about digitalization and how will that fit in our industry, what does it all look like in 5, 10, 15 years time? And, a kind of thought occurred to me when I first kind of came into this role, that when thinking about used vehicles actually, and we still have this, when you've got kind of forecourt space, you still kind of put the details in the windscreen of how much the vehicle is, and, some spec details and all the rest of it. Well, where's the digitalization in that? How can we, everybody's got a smartphone now. How can you kind of make this more accessible for the consumer? This isn't about making life easier for us as the dealer. It's all about making life easier for the consumer, for the customer. So I think the the opportunities now are so exciting. Completely, we will have jobs made, I think, in our industry that don't exist currently. Whether that's around these, opportunities for, how a dealer network looks, how we deal with customers going forward. I don't think we've even necessarily got the answers at the minute. It's just being part of this change and being part of almost like this. It's a revolution, even not even an evolution. It feels like a revolution. This is such an exciting time, and I really, especially as well in commercial vehicles, because I think commercial vehicles is sometimes like the unloved child of the automotive sector. But I think the pandemic brought that to the fore, really, and people were realising the huge sacrifices and to coin a Ford phrase actually, but these hard-working kind of van and truck drivers were the backbone of our country. They kept our country moving at a time that we were all locked down. We couldn't just go to the shops, and but we still wanted to shop. We still needed food. We still needed services. We still needed all of those things, and it was truck and van drivers that kept us moving. So I think that helped to highlight the industry and kind of what the amazing work done by kind of everybody in it. But for me, there's just so much more on the kind of, we're right on the cusp of it now. So yeah, hugely exciting.
And I mean, you mentioned there about commercial vehicles, and the commercial vehicle sector, all right, the automotive sector as a whole has predominantly been male dominated through its life, but commercial vehicles is a little bit more male dominated in historically, isn't it? I mean, you've worked extensively in that sector. How would you approach this? Because I mean, we talk about this gender diversity and everything else, but and you were just talking about that digital world, and the commercials tend to be a little bit behind cars in many ways. How have you approached all that?
I think, to be honest, what has really kind of suited me with the commercial vehicle sector is how down to earth it is and how hands-on it is. And I think you're quite right. We talk about, at Mercedes we talk about technology coming on S-Class first, and eventually it would kind of roll down to, the Sprinter, and then you'd see it on the Actros. And, these were really innovative things for the industry, but not innovative necessarily in automotive. And I think having that kind of down-to-earth approach and just thinking it doesn't matter that you're not necessarily the first with the technology. You might be the first in the van sector or first in the truck sector, but it's all about the things that we can learn from each other. And in the commercial vehicle sector in particular, one minute you're dealing with like an ice cream seller, and the next minute you're dealing with a funeral director. And I can't think there are many industries in life that you can do that and meet such a broad mix of people. So working kind of getting these different perspectives, this is what it's all about for me. Whether it's working with men, whether it's working with different sectors, it is all about absorbing everything that you can from the people that you come across and learning from each other, and just rolling your sleeves up really, and kind of being prepared to get quite down to earth with it is I think it's a great thing. I was very fortunate to have my time on cars, but I have to say my heart completely lies in commercial vehicles.
Now, Caroline, a special part of the Barbara Cox Woman of the Year award is the £5,000 you are actually awarded to spend on your personal development. Have you had a chance to think about how you would like to invest that?
Yeah, it's one of those where, I mean, somebody had to remind me on the day, because that's not like I was just stood there with the trophy, just being completely overwhelmed with a trophy with my name on it, to be honest. But self-development and thinking about ways that I can use that money, yes, of course, for my benefit, but towards the benefit of others. So just to kind of give context to that, I'm a mental health first aider, I'm a trained childline counsellor, and I currently volunteer for Shout, which is a crisis text-based service. So for me, I would love to develop that kind of further, and and gain a qualification perhaps in counselling so that I can use that to give something back. I don't actually, since I left, I was thinking about this earlier, but since I left my A-levels, I haven't actually had a formal qualification since then. I went to uni for all of 3 months, and actually decided that I wanted to just get out into the world of work, and I knew I wanted to go into PR. So I haven't actually gained a formal qualification since then. So I'd like to do something with that, but then also use it to give back. And I know, we at eStar, we work with Ben, the kind of automotive charity.
Yeah.
And I know that, for example, they can provide counselling for people, and they do some fantastic work. And something like that, something that I can kind of almost do alongside the automotive industry, I think that would tick so many boxes for me. I would love to make that more formal.
Yes, yeah.
And finally, you've been with eStar Truck and Van now, which runs 4 Mercedes-Benz commercial vehicle dealerships, and for almost 12 months. And an interesting time in terms of everything going on in the sector, both positive in terms of changes and moving forward, but obviously the challenges that the sector faces. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about, one, the business and how the job's going, and what's next? The big question after that is probably what's next for Caroline Burnell. What's your next move?
Yeah, so I think eStar was a really interesting business. So it formed in September 2020, so kind of at the height of the pandemic, really. And it took over from a failed business. Our chairman, Sid Sadiq, he's a customer of Mercedes-Benz, and he's kind of also chairman of another Mercedes-Benz dealership. So he saw this happening and kind of wanted to, kind of very selflessly on his part, but he wanted to keep the truck and van community moving in the Northwest. It was the pandemic. It was hugely important to keep these vans and trucks on the road, and he wanted to keep as many kind of people in jobs as he possibly could. So he formed eStar as well, and they kind of took over literally the next day from the company that failed. So what an exciting time. When I came into the business in April 2021, it was then all about putting processes in place and kind of stabilizing, I think is the right word to use. And for me, it was then about creating a really open, transparent, kind of one team culture, and something that perhaps hadn't been there before, but really bringing to life this idea that we are here, we are doing this amazing job. I've often likened it to, we're the people behind the front line, we're the people that keep the front line moving. If, the guys and girls didn't do the jobs that they were doing to, mend vehicles and finance vehicles and sell vehicles and all of those things, then actually we wouldn't have ambulances on the road, and we wouldn't have, the DPD driver on the road, and we wouldn't have, the guys that go out to these pylons in the middle of nowhere to fix the pylons. It's when you start to think about the impact that it has, it's massive. So the first year was brilliant, and actually the kind of former business had gone bust. The eStar then in its first year kind of made a 7-figure profit. So I think it kind of shows that the principles of looking after the people, it's kind of the Harvard service profit chain stuff, really. And if you've got the right environment for people, you give them the right tools, you make the team feel looked after, in turn the team then feel secure, they're going to pay you back in loyalty and productivity, and ultimately that's what leads to kind of great customer satisfaction, which then leads to profits and all the rest of it, and then your kind of cycle goes back again. So I think that as a principle, I think eStar have really proved that that's worked. So going forward, to see that continue to pay off, in the first year, we actually moved out of Warrington and out of the existing site in Liverpool, and created a massive, kind of £4 million spend in 2 state-of-the-art facilities in Knowsley, so just outside of Liverpool. And that was a huge undertaking and a significant investment for a brand new business, but everybody agreed that it was the right thing to do. And I think to have that confidence in the board and in the business is very, very, very exciting to see what the future holds with that. And but for me, for my role, it is an interesting time, as you say, but for me, then it's less about selling the metal. It's not about anymore the kind of, because there's no such thing as a bad product. There really isn't. When I started, there were such things as bad products, but now, the product is fantastic. And driving a van, for example, is so similar to driving a car now. They really are fantastic. So it's all about now the service that you get, the care that you get, the attention that you get as a customer, and that's really customer led. The customers are kind of demanding the whole way what they want, what that looks like, how they shape it. And then you look at electrification, and this, you might be a savvy buyer, you've been buying diesel vehicles your whole career. Actually now electric is something completely new and completely different, and doing that kind of consultative piece around what does electric actually mean for a business? How have you got to adapt? And moving away really from this sales culture into being one of sharing information and just being the go-to people without the expectation that you have to then also blog something to somebody. I think those days really are gone. Business, consumers now are so savvy and also incredibly cynical. I know, we're all consumers. And I'm the first one to know now when I'm being sold to, and I'm not interested. I think, and yet I feel that if I'm being taught something, or somebody's sharing knowledge with me, that you're then brought in on that journey, aren't you? You're then kind of working on something together, and then that feels a lot more natural and organic, and like you're building a relationship, how it should be. So I think a lot of the, if I can say, bad practices, I think are really being wheedled out now. There's just no place for them in our industry.
Couldn't agree more, I think, like you say, and the parity between cars and commercials is never more as in line as it ever has been, is it really? Like you say, the commercial vehicles of today are just as good as driving a car. They just serve a different purpose, a different lifestyle, a different requirement, and like you say, the service is no different, is it, for what the consumer wants and how they access the vehicle and the data and the information around it. And like you say, for you, it's offering that service and delivering a good service level. So fascinating to speak to you and hear your career and views on the market. It's been great, Caroline. Pleasure.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Oh, Caroline, you're more than welcome. And many thanks from both Phil and myself for joining us for this Motor Trade Radio podcast special. We really do appreciate you sharing your thoughts on winning the Barbara Cox Woman of the Year award, your take on opportunities for women in automotive. And it's just fascinating hearing about your career and your approach to your career. So many thanks again for joining us. Congratulations once again for winning the award. And unfortunately, that's all we've got time for now. Philip and I will be back with the latest industry headlines on Saturday. Until then, it's goodbye from all of us.